the floor again today to talk about developing the American workforce. Why? Because it's such a big issue back home in Ohio and around the country. Pro-growth federal policies, including the tax cuts, have really worked. I just had another group of Ohio small business people visiting me today, telling me how they have taken those tax savings and used them to invest in their workers, invest in machine, in technology, helping to create more economic growth. It's working. The most recent report released by the Commerce Department shows that the economy grew by 3.1% in the first quarter of this year. That's significant. And by the way, it's about twice what was projected for that same quarter prior to tax reform being put into place. So we're doing about twice as well as the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office thought we'd be doing at this point. Official unemployment is now 3.6%. That's tied for the lowest in 50 years. And we continue to see solid wage growth, including better wage growth, which is really exciting for me, among people who are not, as they say at the Labor Department, supervisory employees, in other words, blue-collar workers, 3.4% increase in wages. That's after about a decade and a half of flat wages when you take inflation into account. So finally, we're seeing real increase in wages. I hear from our small business owners back in Ohio how this is working for them, but I also hear something else, which is that they are looking for workers. The good news is that the economy is growing. There's a demand for workers, but that's not the whole story. We're still seeing a lot of individuals who are missing out on the benefits of a growing economy, not working and not even looking for work. I've visited dozens of factories and businesses over the past year, and I keep hearing the same thing. We just don't have enough skilled workers to fill all the positions we've got in order to be able to keep on growing, to keep expanding as a company. And yet in Ohio and elsewhere, we've got not enough working age adults participating in the labor force. So how do we solve this problem? How do we bring this together? How do we take people off the sidelines and into work? By the way, among men, I'm told it's over 8 million men right now are not working at all, meaning they're not looking for work, they don't show up in the unemployment numbers. Labor force economists call this the labor force participation rate. It's relatively low. It's fallen in the past decade, meaning there are a lot of unemployed Americans, again, not even looking for work, not being recorded in those official Department of Labor unemployment numbers. It's so low that if our labor force participation was simply at its normal pre-recession level, so go back 10 years, and what was normal for decades before that, if you just went back to that labor force participation rate, our country's unemployment rate would not be 3.6% today. Guess what it would be? More like 8.3%. So if we had an 8.3% unemployment number out there, you know, all of us would be kind of pulling out our hair thinking, how do we deal with this? How do we get more people back to work? Well, that's what we've got, essentially. And again, of particular concern to me are those who are of working age. 8 million men between the ages of 25 and 54 who are not working. We need to get these people off the sidelines and back into the workforce where they can have the dignity and self-respect that comes from work, and where our businesses can have their talents, because we need them to have our economy continue to grow. To achieve this, I think there are a number of challenges we have to address. First, we do need to focus on what's called the skills gap. This skills gap is essentially a mismatch between the skills that are in demand today and the skills that our workers have. This labor force out there that is not finding work doesn't have the skills that are needed to get the jobs that are available. It's a widespread issue. It's holding back our economy from fulfilling its full potential. In the most recent skills gap study from 2018, Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute highlighted this skills gap. The study found that it may leave an estimated 2.4 million positions unfilled between 2018 and 2028, with a potential economic impact, a negative impact on our economy of $2.5 trillion. So this skills gap is real, it's hurting our economy, and we've got to figure out how to address it in more innovative ways. One way to address it, of course, is to have more robust training for the jobs that are going unfilled. Pretty simple. Often, of course, these are technical jobs. These are trade jobs. Plumbers, welders, nursing assistants, IT jobs like coders. Economists call these jobs middle skill jobs. What they mean by that is that these are the kind of jobs that don't require a college education, typically, but they do require some training after high school. That's what's really missing right now. That's where this skills gap can be closed. The best known training you've probably heard about for these kinds of jobs is called career and technical education, CTE. For those who are older, you might think of vocational education. CTE programs are doing great work all over the country. I've seen this a lot firsthand in Ohio. I'm a big fan of career and technical education. So I visit our CTE programs, Butler Tech near Hamilton, Ohio, the Max Hayes High School in Cleveland, Ohio. I co-founded and co-chaired something here in the Senate called the CTE Caucus alongside Senator Tim Kaine. And we have meetings here, we bring conferences here, we try to encourage more career and technical education back home. It's important. But the training we need goes well beyond these great high school programs. Shorter-term technical workforce training programs post-high school are another key way to help close the skills gap. Think of the many workforce training programs that might be offered at your community college. We need to encourage more of those. We need to be sure that the federal government is playing a role here to hold up career and technical education generally, but also to ensure that these training programs are given the same opportunities that we give to two-year, four-year colleges and universities. One impactful way to close that skills gap is through Pell Grants. Currently, we use Pell Grants to help expand access to college-level education to Americans. So you have to meet the criteria, which is basically an income criteria. So for lower-income families in America, if you want to go to a four-year college or university and you otherwise qualify, you can get a Pell Grant to do it, not a loan, a grant, and that's great. But unbelievably, you can't get that same grant if you want to go to a 15-week, 14-week, 13-week, 12-week training program to learn how to be a welder or a coder or a hospital tech. To me, that makes no sense. Our Bipartisan Jobs Act, which I co-wrote with Senator Tim Kaine, would allow us to use the Pell Grant for these shorter-term job training programs with an industry-recognized credential at the end of the process. That's what employers are looking for. That's what these people need, young people and mid-career people who are looking for a job. Under current law, you're eligible for it for an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, but not to enroll in a CTE program under 15 weeks. It doesn't make any sense, and the Jobs Act would fix that. By the way, these kinds of workforce training programs provide students with academic and technical skills, knowledge, and training that is necessary today to fill the 21st century jobs that we've got. They encompass the kinds of high-quality, rigorous job training programs that are easily transferable to the in-demand jobs that we have, whether it's learning how to conduct HVAC installation, how to operate factory machinery, which often, by the way, involves computer skills, or how to be a programmer or a coder. These programs teach students the practical, transferable skills that keep our economy moving. I've seen firsthand how this can work in my home state of Ohio. Most recently, in May, I had the opportunity to deliver the commencement address at two of our community colleges that specialize in these types of programs, Sinclair Community College in Dayton and Marion Technical College in Marion County. I was happy to go to these graduation ceremonies. First, both schools were great partners in helping us develop the Jobs Act, but also these schools are getting it done. They're giving students what they need, the tools they need to be able to succeed in today's workforce. Second, I'm always inspired by attending commencements at our community colleges. At these two colleges, as an example, I saw individuals as young as 15 years old walk across the stage. To this one young man, he was getting his associate's degree that he started with a career and technical education program in high school before he was getting his driver's license. Also, individuals as old as 74 years old. So I saw the whole range. And they weren't just graduating. They were commencing a new stage of their lives that's filled with opportunity because they're getting jobs. That's why the Jobs Act is so important. It has the potential to help thousands more students like the ones I met at Marion and Sinclair in gaining the skills necessary to be their best and to get a job. At the same time, we know that addressing the skills gap won't fully solve the challenges we face in raising our labor participation rates. Another is overcoming the scourge of addiction that we've seen in Ohio and elsewhere around the country, both from opioids and more recently, crystal meth. Opioids, prescription drugs, heroin, and fentanyl, the opioids have hit us really hard in Ohio. See, my colleague from Indiana is here on the floor. He feels the same thing. It's torn our families apart. It's devastated our communities. It's forced a lot of able-bodied adults out of the workforce while they struggle with their addiction. We've begun to make some progress on this front. After 8 straight years of rising overdose deaths, 8 straight years, every year, more people dying from overdose, to the point we were losing 72,000 Americans a year. 8 straight years of increases. Finally, we've seen some drop in the last year. In Ohio, we had a 21.4% decrease based on a study that was done by the Center for Disease Control. These are the last data that we have from the most recent numbers. We'll see. We expect to have some new numbers soon for all of 2018. We'll see. So that's good. The 21% decrease is good. The problem is it started from such a high watermark. And frankly, what I'm hearing this year, 2019, is some of these overdose rates are increasing in some areas of Ohio. But we've seen some progress. So according to, again, the studies that have been done, we're reducing the overdose deaths, but still we have so many people who are addicted, and still we have this issue of how to get them into the workforce. Bills we passed here in the United States Congress, like our CARA legislation, Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act, and the CURES legislation, have really helped. The STOP Act has helped to try to keep this deadly fentanyl, which is the opioid that's killing most people, out of our country. $3 billion in increased funding has gone out from this Congress over the past few years to deal with education, prevention, treatment, longer-term recovery, providing naloxone, this miracle drug to reverse the effects of an overdose. That's good, and we're making some progress, but not enough yet. Not enough. Our work is far from finished. And the issue that I see in Ohio happening is that as we're making progress on the opioids, we're seeing crystal meth beginning to increase. Pure crystal meth, methamphetamines coming from Mexico across the Mexican border into our country. Back in the day, we had meth labs in Ohio and Indiana and other states represented in this chamber. Those meth labs are pretty much gone now. People aren't making it in their own homes or in communities in Ohio. Instead, they're buying it on the street because it is cheaper and more powerful to buy pure crystal meth. So that's not a good thing. It's a bad thing because it's indicating that the crystal meth is spreading. And by the way, these drugs are causing more law enforcement concerns than ever because, like cocaine, this is a stimulant. They call it a psychostimulant, which creates more violent crimes and more challenges for our law enforcement officials. So we've got to ensure that we continue this downward trend in overdose deaths and address the crystal meth issue, which I'll be talking about more over the next couple of weeks, some ideas on crystal meth. Another factor that undermines our efforts to develop our workforce is the increasing number of people with a felony record. Having a felony record can be a heavy burden to bear when trying to find employment. We see far too often the downward spiral that occurs when inmates are released back into the community without any kind of job training, any kind of way to deal with their mental health or drug abuse history or their addiction. So people find themselves out of a job and then committing crimes again to be able to get by. This often goes hand in hand with the issue of addiction, as so many people are jailed for nonviolent drug offenses related to opioids, meth, and other drugs. Fortunately, we're making some progress in getting these individuals the help and treatment they need, thanks to some actions we've taken here at the federal level as well. The Second Chance Act, which was signed into law about a decade ago, is helping. I was the co-author of that back in the House and the co-author again this year for the reauthorization of that legislation. It provides federal grant money to state and local entities to be able to help people when they get out of prison, get their lives back together. Again, provide that job training in prison as they get out of prison in that transition and be able to deal with issues they have, including mental health and addiction. That has been remarkably successful in so many cases in reducing the recidivism rate, the number of people who go back into the system. Unfortunately, about 2/3 of those who get out of prison get rearrested within 2 or 3 years. So there's a great opportunity here if you use these programs to keep these people out of the system, to get them back on their feet, back with their families, and back at work. Last week, I was able to see firsthand how groups at the state and local level are using some of these federal resources to create strong and effective pipelines to get individuals off the sidelines and back into participating in the workforce. In Cincinnati, I had the opportunity to attend a graduation in supply chain logistics for 11 women incarcerated on nonviolent drug offenses. These 11 women now have a skill, a tool, to be able to go out and get a job in this 21st century economy we have. And in Cincinnati in particular, we've got a lot of supply chain jobs that are available. They're excited about it. I've also visited one of the companies where a few of these women are going, where they hire a lot of second chance folks, people who are returning citizens. They've had great success. These workers are grateful. They show up on time. They're loyal. And we need more companies to be able to take that person who has been down on his or her luck, gone through a program, and is ready to work. A lot of these women, by the way, were repeat offenders of low-level crimes, and they had circulated in and out of prison for years. This program is run by the Hamilton County Office of Reentry, which in 2010, it was established in part from grant money from the Second Chance Act we talked about. So again, in coordination with local partners, this Office of Reentry has run programs like this that have given incarcerated individuals the chance to reenter society, the tools and support they need for gainful employment. That is one of the reasons that we have the opportunity out there to reduce this problem of so many people out of work altogether, because there's great potential here to get people back to work. In May, I attended a roundtable with a number of workforce development nonprofits in Northeast Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, including the Boys and Girls Club, the Habitat for Humanity, Youth Opportunities Unlimited, Bloom Bakery. Bloom is an example of an entity that is taking advantage of, again, some of these federal opportunities with the Second Chance Act. Their parent nonprofit received a Second Chance Act grant that allowed them to help ex-inmates reenter the community. During their time at Bloom, individuals have a chance to contribute to the operations of the bakery, learn the culinary skills, learn how to bake, and also just learn how to deal with people, because it's a retail outlet, and how to be good in the service career. Had the opportunity to meet a number of the individuals. Ashankni Johnson was one I talked to, and she talked about how Bloom was really a second chance for her, how she intended to use what she was learning there to find long-term success in the culinary field. I also met with Trishan Bankhead. Trishan is a participant in another program, one of their sister programs that trains healthcare professionals. He's currently working at University Hospital as a nursing assistant and is pursuing a degree in nursing. It was great to see that. Again, it's a second chance for him. Meeting them, hearing their life experiences, and seeing what they've accomplished underscores the need to continue to provide these opportunities so they can get ahead in life and so our economy can have them in the workforce. Let me conclude by saying that when it comes to our economy, more participation is better for everybody. We want more people coming out of the sidelines, coming out of the shadows, getting into work. Let's make sure all Americans have the tools they need to go to work and to find success. Let's close that skills gap by doing the career and technical education programs that we've talked about, but also providing more help from the federal level rather than just going to colleges and universities for a degree. Let it go to these short-term training programs so you can get a meaningful certificate to go to work right away. Let's help get the Jobs Act passed to be able to do that. And let's help individuals overcome their addiction. And let's help people stay out of jail and stay with their families and with their work. Let's give every single American the opportunity to get the tools they need to achieve their God-given potential. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.